Hello and welcome to the special podcast on the Pahalgam attack and the aftermath. Everyone wants to know how India will respond to that horrific massacre of tourists in Pahalgam, Jammu and Kashmir. I have with me Colonel Anurag Awasthi, a military veteran who's done several tenures in Jammu and Kashmir. Colonel Awasthi, welcome.
Thank you, Sandy.
First off, why the attack on Pahalgam? Why now?
All right. Okay, let's look at the bigger picture. You know, the currency, insofar as the Pakistan rupee is concerned, it's being on a very, very difficult downward scale since the last 10 years. Today, it's at 280 rupees as we speak to a US dollar.
Right.
Now, along with that, there's an external debt of nearly 100 billion US dollars.
Yeah.
Insofar as Pakistan is concerned, the CPEC is not going anywhere as we speak. In addition to that, there have been a number of IMF bailouts, which all of us are aware as to how Pakistani economy is and where we are going.
7 billion was the latest.
That's the
bailout
latest
a few
figure.
months back.
That's the latest figure. And that also with a lot of negotiations and stuff like that. But then when you look at all this, you suddenly find on the other side, in the valley, you find there's normalcy which has come to life. There's a massive amount of tourism.
Right.
The counterterrorism grid is absolutely in place.
Yes.
There is ceasefire on the line of control. So infiltration is totally checked by the armed forces as well as all the CPOs which are deployed there in the counterterrorism grid. So once you look at this holistic thing, now what do you do? So how do you keep the pot boiling?
Right.
That's the only way to trigger something like that. And let's see how the adversary reacts. That's the only way. So that's the why of it, I think. That's the way it is. I can see and visualize about.
But you believe there was evidence that the Pakistan military would attack, given how explicitly the Pakistan Army Chief General Asim Munir mentioned that we are very different from the Indians. He gave that speech less than a week before the attack. Do you think that was a precursor to this? There's something like, I mean, if I were to look at it as a cynic, I would believe that this is literally a confession, before the act was carried out.
Yeah, you could call it a dog whistle, actually, take the rhetoric up, possibly take the verbal escalatory ladder, as they call it, a little up. Now, you have to look at Asim Munir. Now, if you read his character sketch and, you see how he, looks at things and how he actually executes things that actually come to him or thrown at him. He's trying to emulate Ziaul Haq in some manner or the
interesting.
other. He's trying to emulate him. Now, he does not come from PMA Kakul.
Right.
He comes from the Officers Training School, Mangala.
What's the difference between these two? Explain to us.
The PMA Kakul was essentially the main academy, and the Officers Training School in Mangala was opened sometime much later and got shut down in 1992 after 26 courses or so.
Right. So this is the difference between the NDA, the IMA, and the OTA.
Loosely, yes, but he does not come from the mainstream PMA Kakul, which is the main feeder academy of the gentlemen cadets in the Pakistan Army. Now, he has had some very interesting tenures. He's been in Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
He's been in Malaysia. Right. He's been in Japan. In addition to that, he has done his Command and General Staff course. He's done his National Defense University course. And then he's one of the only chiefs of Pakistan Army who has been DGMI and has been DG ISI both.
He's the first Army Chief to be...
who's tenanted both these billets.
Right.
So in addition to that, he comes from a family in which his father was a teacher and he's had his religious training.
Yeah.
And he comes from a family which also is known as Hafiz.
Yes.
So they are
those who memorize the Quran.
Absolutely, who memorize the Quran. So he looks at India with a very sectarian lens.
Right.
He looks at it like that.
Right.
So while that is the that is the basic prognosis of the entire thing, you also have to understand how he gets his steam insofar as what he thinks is concerned.
Interesting. The fact that he is trying to emulate General Ziaul Haq, and the word is that he is possibly the third Zia Bharti into the Pakistan military. That hardline Islamism that General Ziaul Haq introduced after taking over in 1976, where he made it mandatory for Islamic knowledge of Islam, and he changed the motto of the Pakistan military as well. And he's the third or the fourth Pakistan army chief to be the so-called Zia Bhartis, who were who entered the military after General Zia, just before Zia-ul-Haq passed away, 1986. But we've also heard Colonel Awasthi about how the Pakistan military is by and large very secular. I've seen a lot of writing and scholarship around that. Do you see Munir actually trying to change that? Like you said very correctly, that he's trying to emulate General Zia-ul-Haq.
Well, I think he's changing it because you firstly gave a speech some 4 or 5 days before this event.
Yeah,
it's a very dastardly effort by whoever has done it. I think it's totally condemnable, which has been absolutely.
Which is segregated, tourists based on religion, and you murdered them in utter brutality.
It's brutality. I mean, you forget about everything else. It's inhuman. You don't do this to a person who's not holding a weapon.
Yes.
And those people who have done nothing to you, or they have no lien on your, political, military, or socio-economic.
But that's the Pakistan Army for you. 26/11, 1993.
Absolutely.
The July 2006 train bombings. But that point that you made about dog whistle, that interesting analogy there. But from dog whistles to the siren that we seem to have sounded of the Indus Water Treaty, a treaty that's held fast for 65 years.
That's correct.
Three conflicts between India and Pakistan. The IWT has held so far.
Yes.
But the Indian government has now held the treaty in abeyance. What's the implication of this? What is the significance of this treaty being held in abeyance?
Very, very interesting thing, This treaty was signed in 1960, we all know, which looks at, the 3 eastern rivers and the 3 western rivers, in which we look at Ravi, Beas, and Satluj, and the Pakistanis look at the Indus, the Jhelum, and Chenab. So this is the basic
bifurcation of the
bifurcation of the east and west, right? But then, having said that, we must also understand that India is an upper riparian state.
Yes.
It's not a lower riparian state. So either which way, we have to respect that. Now, this has been a topic of debate for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And the Indian government has sent feelers earlier also. So this is nothing very new that, the Indus Water Treaty needs to be revoked or put in abeyance or or to be reviewed. If you look at, Section 12, Charlie, of the Indus Water Treaty. See, I'm not a treaty expert, but if you read, essentially the articles of the Indus Water Treaty, you will come to know that the article very clearly says that it is subject to modification, it is subject to review.
Yes.
Now, having said that, in 1960, and this is 2025, you just have a look, or possibly demographically look how the population has changed, how the water table has changed, how the climate change has affected the entire, fauna and flora in that region. How is the water level? How's the groundwater level? What is the precipitation index? And all of that. So you can't have a treaty which is 65 years old, cast in stone, and say that, look, you can't change it.
When as you mentioned in the treaty itself, you said that it's open to review.
It's open to review.
Right.
So having said that, if you behaved well, well, that's damn good. But if you don't, then I think as the upper riparian state, we hold the right to, put it in abeyance. And that's exactly what the government of India has done.
Now, the wording of this in abeyance, when you hold a treaty in abeyance, what exactly are you saying? That you're opening it up for review, or you're not scrapping the treaty, you're not backing out of the treaty? What exactly are you doing?
You're essentially reviewing it. You put it in abeyance. It's up to you whether you want to, get the water going to the other side, or you don't have the water going on to the other side. However, for this, you require infrastructure. So for the infrastructure, you would want a couple of reservoirs so that, you will have to get that water channeled in a particular manner. Or possibly, get into more hydroelectric projects, which are already there, which are on the line now. So it's a work in progress, but it'll take around a year and a half or something to get this done. But the message is very clear.
Yes.
The messaging is that, look, if you behave, then it's all right. Then we look at the humane part of it. And if you don't behave, that's the way it goes. Also, Sandy, you must understand When you look at Pakistan, 24%, if I am correct in terms of, statistics, of GDP of Pakistan is dependent on agriculture.
Yes.
So where does it get the water from?
And very interestingly, obviously the Pakistan military is also into agriculture now. They've been pushing this so-called green revolution in Pakistan. They've been taking up land for cultivation and building canals. So
It's an enterprise.
It is an enterprise. But
it's a national enterprise.
The Pakistan military, to my mind, seems to be doing everything that India's political class did from the 1960s. The Green Revolution of the late 1960s and economic liberalization of 1991. All of these are milestones that Pakistan never went through. And the military under Asim Munir seems to be trying to do all this in a jiffy.
See, my, two pennies for this, Sandeep, would be that I think this gentleman is going to be a global liability. He really needs to understand, yes, he needs to really understand what is the, the present, what is the future, what is the trade imbalance, where are the two economies.
Right.
He cannot get a country into an economic suicide by doing what he is wanting to do or possibly, is conspiring to do.
Very interestingly, Colonel Awasthi, what in past terror attacks, we were always looking at the terror group that carried it out. Whether it was Lashkar or it was Jaish or TRF or one of those, cutouts that we always keep talking about. But the interesting part is this time around, the conversation is directly at the Pakistan military. We are talking about General Asim Munir. We are linking all of these to him. That itself should alarm the Pakistan state that all of their proxies, all of their cutouts, which were kept precisely for deniability, even that seems to be failing. And as you correctly mentioned, he's become an international headache.
He'll be a liability. The way he's thinking, see, you can't play a playbook of the 1980s in 2020.
Absolutely. You can't do what General Zia did with in Punjab in the 80s or Jammu and Kashmir in the mid-80s, and of course carried forward by General Mirza Aslam Beg. But do you see General Asim Munir being overthrown by his own generals, if he is such a liability?
I would, this is a very interesting question, but as I look at it, for all you know, he just might get into the 1977 glitch that Pakistan went through, the imposition of martial law, for all you know.
Right. He might actually pull the trigger.
Yes, he just might pull the trigger. You know why? Because, you look at the scenario right now. You look at the tariffs war, which is going on. At this juncture, in the tariffs war, I do not think there's going to be a very major issue between China and India, because at the end of the day, India is a large market.
Yes.
You have to understand that. The second part is India is a much stronger and a much very, much viable economy.
Yes.
As in terms of various economies in the world, it's the fifth largest economy in the world. You have to understand that.
Yes.
In terms of force parity, when you look at it, I don't need to tell you more. We all know what is the force parity ratios between India and Pakistan. As also, you also have two very, very distinct corps of Pakistan Army now looking up north.
Right.
So that is a very conceptual.
2 corps, 4 divisions.
Or more, which look towards north, that is towards Afghanistan.
Right.
And then when you look at Asim Munir, you're also looking at the Imran Khan angle, where he was a very key player.
I was coming to that.
Yes, he was a very key player in that. And you're also looking at various issues as to what the present political structure in Pakistan.
Right.
It's not a very conducive political structure, unlike India, which has always thrived as a great democracy.
Yes.
So my fear is that I hope it is not a 1977 redo again.
Or 1999.
Or 1999.
General Musharraf. But
something like
Colonel Awasthi, give us a sense of how the Pakistan military, the dictators see this. You had 4 dictators. You had 4 overt dictators, and you had many, many more covert dictators. Now, Asim Munir seems to be that covert dictator faction who wants to exercise power without any responsibility. He doesn't want to capture power. But as you're saying, there's that possibility that he could actually, pull the trigger on that one and take over the country and possibly discover it's not like running 30 core or the ISI or even the MI. But what is the thinking in the Pakistan military? Why is it that you've had these 4 takeovers in the past? You had Zia in the 70s, and of course, before that, you had Yahya, Ayub, and of course, after that, you had Musharraf. And I'm looking at these 4 dictators. It's never gone down well for either of them. None of them have had this glorious exit. They've all died in ignominy. General Zia, we all know what happened.
Yes.
Went up in that fireball in Bahawalpur.
Yes.
Musharraf died in exile.
Yes.
We've seen those horrendous last pictures of him, literally, a fraction of what he was. It's never gone down peacefully for any of these dictators. Why does Asim Munir think that he is God's gift to Pakistan?
Now, Sandeep can't get into his mind, but when you look at him, what he's doing, he's raised the rhetoric.
Right.
He's raised the bar.
Yeah.
He has shown an inclination of climbing up an escalatory ladder.
Right.
Right, which is not very good. You do these things when your economy is, very, very robust.
Right.
You do these things when your international image is absolutely sterling.
Yeah.
You do all this when you yourself are a country which people look up to.
Right. Not when you're living from hand to
You-
handout.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're on a dole,
Yes.
frankly. Right?
Yes. From dole to dole.
From dole to dole.
Yeah.
And then you say that, I would like to do this and, raise the alarm and,
Yeah.
the
But
proverbial.
it's also a battle of survival for Asim Munir, isn't he? He's what, entering the 3rd year of his 3-year tenure, and he's up for a
Yes.
renewal for that. So in that sense, he's also looking at a tenure extension.
No, he should be happy. Just 3 days before his retirement, he was instituted as the chief of army staff. He should be happy where he's reached, frankly.
He's gone way above his, calling in life. But, finally, have to come back to the meat of this discussion today. What are India's options going to be? We've just indicated that all options are on the table, right from the IWT, of course,
Yes.
people-to-people contact, and so been snapped. That ridiculous ceremony at Atari Wagah has been toned down. Would there be an attack on Pakistan? Will there be a counterstrike that India will carry out on Pakistan as an answer for what General Asim Munir and GHQ Rawalpindi did in Pahalgam?
Now, this is a question which you yourself have answered, which says that all options are on the table. When you look at the sway of things post this incident has happened, you first had the diplomatic riposte,
Right.
in which you got the Indus Water Treaty, you cancelled the SARC visas, you've told the people who are here to move in 72 hours all the way away from India. You have closed the only land route at the Atari border, which looks into annual trade, Sandeep, of nearly 3,500 crores.
Right.
That's a lot of trade between India and Pakistan, in spite of those days when Pakistan used to be that MFN, the most favored nation status and stuff like that. Even since then, the trade has grown. Now, with this, what does Pakistan do? It says that I will, suspend Simla agreement. You mean to say that was Simla agreement a very big binding and LOC was never breached in the last 76 or 77 years? It has been breached so many times. So where is the veracity of the Simla agreement, firstly? That is one. The second thing is it gives you the entire, leeway or the entire, board to understand that there is no sanctity of LOC. In the sanctity of LOC is essentially tantamount to the Simla agreement.
Right.
If the Pakistanis themselves say that we will suspend Simla agreement, then so be it.
Right.
So it's very good. Now, when you're looking at this diplomatic, overtures, and then they have done a couple of things here and there everywhere, which is rather cosmetic to me, frankly, if you ask me. Then you're looking at the coercive options. In the coercive options, you have looked at the Indus Water Treaty very clearly.
Yes.
The water is life. You have to understand it. Then you come to the economic part of it.
Yeah.
Now, whether you look at, a particular system in a very economic manner, from the from giving even your votes during the IMF bailouts to people, right? And we have to also understand that armies don't go to war, nations do.
Nations, yeah.
It's a national effort, so
Right.
that also has to be understood. The last part is social. You chopped off people to people contacts.
Yes.
So that is also a very great significance if you
Right.
look at it. So I'm just breaking it down into, I gave you the diplomatic, I gave you the coercive,
Yes.
I gave you the economic, I gave
Right.
you the social, and the last is the military option. Now,
Right.
how do you prosecute the military option?
So in 16, you had the so-called surgical strikes, so cross-border commando raids. And in 19, you had that very famous strike by the Indian Air Force on the Java Top camp in Balakot, which is the first time since 1971 that Indian jets have attacked territory that was not Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. What is it going to be like in 2025?
Options are all on the table. It could be even severing the CPEC in the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. It could be something, a repeat of 2016, 2019. It could be also a conflict limited to a particular area. It could be looking at some very, very important assets and targets. It could also be looking at a full-blown conflict, but that I personally feel would take time, because build-up requires time, logistics requires time, intent requires time. And I go back again to Baron von Clausewitz, and his famous trinity of war, which says war can be prosecuted only if the trident is clear. That is the public opinion, the political will, and the competence of the military.
Right.
So if these three align, then well, that's the story of Pakistan. And then, of course, there are some internal issues in Pakistan, which we all know about, as to what is happening internally in Pakistan, as far as, the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is concerned, or whether it is Balochistan. It's as it is imploding from inside.
Yes.
So what happens is, I think, anybody's guess. But yes, all I understand, and what I feel with my limited experience while in uniform and outside in the corporate sector, is that the offensive, in whichever manner, whether it is calibrated, whether it is on a medium footing, or whether it is all out, will happen. Because this is something which is absolutely unpardonable. It doesn't happen like this.
Right.
This is a repeat of 7th October.
Yes.
You are going, armed in a manner, in a place which is a little desolate, and you are killing innocent people. How does that augur well for any country, or for any army, or for any, international opinion? It doesn't augur well. It is against humanity. You leave everything else.
But and the interesting point there also, Colonel Awasthi, to add to what you just said, is that the terrorists came with body cam, which is to indicate that they wanted to capture these deeds, and they wanted to broadcast that, make a spectacle out of this murdering of innocent civilians, and to provoke an action, a reaction from India.
Yes.
Do you think we would actually be falling into that trap if we reacted? Because then there is a view that believes that Pakistan's military and General Asim Munir then say that, look, India is attacking us, and we are your saviors. So the Pakistan military is strengthened by conflict. Do you believe that's something that we could be looking at?
You could. No bets are off the table. No bets are off from hedging anymore.
Right.
But what I would personally feel is that at this juncture, we need ourselves in the country to be very committed and very focused towards an agenda which our political and military leaders decide, and not sway in spite of our own leanings, our own ideologies, and our own, understanding of the situation.
Because the terrorists didn't seem to
they didn't
discriminate except on religion, which part of the country the Indians tourists were from.
Yes. So as citizens of the country, we should be very clear that we need to be absolutely falling in line with the political as well as the military leadership.
Yes.
And whatever they do will be absolutely in line with what India aims to be in 2047.
Right.
So I think that should be, the mantra for, all of us who are, proud citizens of this great country that we live in.
Absolutely. And very clearly, India is not going to turn the other cheek now in 2025. Thank you very much, Colonel Awasthi. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you very much.